Madam Secretary, Ms. Jenkins, would you do roll call?
Mr. Cooper?
Here.
Mr. Daniels?
Here.
Mr. Duncan?
Here.
Mr. Ferreira?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Verbois?
Present.
Ms. Damiano?
Here. Item 1B, I would ask Mr. Jenko to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand, face the flag, salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Jenko. At this time, for item 1C, we have the administration of oath of office, and I would like to ask our attorney, Ashley Bass, if she would conduct this item for us.
Yes, I think we can all do it together. Should we stand? Please raise your right hand. I state your name. Do solemnly swear or affirm
Zoom participants, you need to also do the oath of office.
yes. So, Ms. Damiano, Mr. Miller, can y'all repeat
Not
this
you,
with us?
Kevin.
I'm sorry? Okay, we're going to start over. Ready? Okay.
Okay.
I state your name.
Miller.
Do solemnly swear or affirm
Do swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all of the duties incumbent upon me as a member of the Educational Facilities Improvement District to the best of my ability and understanding, so help me God.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, for item 1D, Mr. Brett Schnellbach will sort of be the lead to walk us through the election of officers.
Thank you, Ms. Sealy. Since we have not elected any officers, I'm going to facilitate the office of chairperson and then turn the gavel over to the chairperson. What I would like to do is just briefly describe some of the responsibilities of the offices. There are 4. There's a chairman who will run our board meetings and set the meeting agendas, a vice chairperson who assumes the duty of the chair when he or she is unavailable, will assume the gavel responsibility when the chairman wishes to propose a motion, that type of activity. There will be a secretary position whose responsibility for producing the minutes of each board meeting. However, we have the services of Ms. Cynthia Jenkins to assist in that, so the secretary would oversee Ms. Jenkins' work and confirm the minutes of each meeting. And then the treasurer. The treasurer would be responsible for developing annual financial reports on sales tax collections and funds submitted to the school board. I would also assign the Tangipahoa Parish School Board Director of Business Services, Ms. Kay Roberts, to develop the required financial reports, and the treasurer would just present those to this board. So those are the positions of officers on the board. So at this particular time, I'd like to open the floor for nominations for a chairperson. Yes, sir.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Brett Duncan.
Mr. Duncan's been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Yes, sir.
Are we allowed to self-nominate?
I believe we could. Is that something we're allowed to do? Yes.
Nominate myself for chairperson.
Okay. Mr. Cooper nominates Mr. Cooper. So we have Mr. Duncan, Mr. Cooper as nominees. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, we'll close the floor for nominations, and then we'll take a vote. Ashley, how should we vote? Should we vote for one board member, one chairperson at a time, or we ask?
No, I think each person cast their own vote.
Okay, then I'll turn it over to Ms. Jenkins, and we'll do a roll call vote.
Mr. Cooper? Yourself? Okay. Mr. Daniels?
Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Duncan? Mr. Ferrera? Mr. Miller?
Duncan.
Mr. Verbois?
Mr. Duncan.
Ms. Damiano?
Mr. Duncan.
Mr. Duncan wins.
Okay, at this particular time, I'm going to turn the gavel over to Mr. Duncan. And Mr. Duncan, if you don't mind, assume the chair for chairperson.
This time we'll open nominations for vice chairperson.
I'd like to make a motion that Mr. Cooper be vice chair.
I have a motion to we have a nomination of Mr. Cooper as vice chairman. Are there any other nominations? There being hearing no other nominations, I'll accept a motion to close nominations for vice chairman.
I move.
Motion is made by Mr. Verbois to close nominations, seconded by Mr. Ferrera. We'll call the question. Is there any objection to closing nominations? There being no objection, nominations are closed. Mr. Cooper is named vice chairman of the board. Congratulations, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Thank you for considering me, Parish President Robert Miller.
We'll now open nominations for secretary. We have a nomination for the secretary's position.
I nominate Ms. Damiano.
A nomination of Ms. Damiano as secretary,
Second.
which is supported
I'll
by
make a second. That was Miller.
Mr. Miller. Did you have a nomination?
Mr. Miller, did you have a nomination?
I was making a second if there's such a thing.
Okay.
All right. Are there any other nominations for the position of secretary? Hearing no other nominations, I'll take a motion to close nominations for the position of secretary. Motion made by Mr. Verbois, seconded by Mr. Ferrera. Is there any objection to closing nominations? Hearing no objection, the motion is agreed to. Mrs. Damiano is selected as the secretary of the board. Congratulations, Mrs. Damiano. We'll now move to the position of treasurer. Is there a motion or a nomination for the position of treasurer?
I'd like to nominate Mr. Ferrera.
Nomination is made of Mr. Darrell Ferrera. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to close nominations. Is there a motion? Motion is made by Mr. Verbois. Is there a
Second.
seconded by Mr. Cooper? Is there any objection to the motion? Hearing no objection to the motion is agreed to, and Mr. Ferrera is named treasurer. Congratulations, Mr. Ferrera. All right, that concludes the election of officers. We'll now move to a review of the Educational Facilities Improvement District of Tangipahoa's bylaws. Mr. Schnottelbach, are you going to be presenting that item?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Just really want to review the bylaws. Y'all should have a copy in your folder. Did I give y'all folders? Yes. Y'all helped yourselves. Okay, great. So these bylaws were created when the Educational Facility District was first founded back in 2011. And the purpose of the Tangipahoa Parish Educational Facility Improvement District is set forth by revised statutes 33:2740.37. Article 1 is our membership. Just going to go through them real quickly. It's not very long. Bear with me, please. Each district shall be administered by and governed by a board of directors comprised of such number of members as determined by the respective school board, not to be less than 5 appointed by the respective board. We have appointed 7 members. Section 2, directors shall be selected based on their experience in financial matters and their ability to act effectively for the best interests of the school system. Each director shall be a resident of the Tangipahoa Parish. Section 3, each director shall be appointed for a term of 6 years. Congratulations. Section 4, a director shall be considered as disqualified to serve if such director becomes physically or mentally unable to fulfill their duties, or if such director no longer resides in Tangipahoa Parish. Section number 5, in the event of a vacancy of office or a disqualification of a member, the Tangipahoa Parish School Board shall appoint a replacement within 30 days of receiving notice of said vacancy. Article 2, officers. The district shall designate its chairperson, its vice chairperson, secretary, and treasurer. These shall be elected at an annual meeting and shall serve one-year term. Article 2, voting. A majority of the directors shall constitute a quorum, and a majority vote of the directors constituting a quorum shall be necessary for any action taken by the district. No vacancy on the board shall impair the right of a quorum to exercise all the rights and perform all the duties of the district. Article 4, meetings. The district hereby fixes the place of its meetings to be the Tangipahoa Parish School Board Central Office in Amite, Louisiana. Section 3, the meetings shall be held at least annually on the first Tuesday in June and thereafter as required by the chairman and/or the school board. Section 3, the domicile of this district is Amite, Louisiana, in Tangipahoa Parish. Section 4, the district shall follow the Louisiana public meeting laws. Article 5, powers of the district. Each district shall have all the rights and powers necessary to carry out and effectuate the purpose and provisions of the Louisiana Revised Statute 33:2740.37, including the rights and powers set forth by Louisiana Revised Statute 13:5121. Article 6, Rules of Order. Section 1, the meetings shall be governed by Robert's Revised Rules of Order. The district shall allow public input on each agenda item. Section 2, the bylaws may be amended at any time by a 2/3 vote of the members. These bylaws were adopted by the district on the first day of February 2011. Just for information purposes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Schneiderbeck. Do any members have any questions about the bylaws? Okay. Before we move on to our next agenda item, I did want to recognize some folks in the audience and make sure that our board members know. We have Mr. Jerry Moore, who's a fellow school board member. I want to make sure that we recognize him and thank him for being here. We have all of our assistant superintendents. I don't know if all of y'all met them. We have Mr. Schneiderbach, our chief financial officer, Dr. Hurst, who is in charge of everything students for the school system, and Mr. Jinko, who is in charge of everything human resources and academics. And then, of course, Ms. Sandage. Next item on the agenda is to just review our prior cooperative endeavor agreement. This was one that was done back in 2011 by one of the previous boards, right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The purpose I included this on the agenda is really just to kind of explain how the Education Facility Improvement District works with the Tangipahoa Parish School Board. Y'all are an independent board. Y'all take action independent of what the school board asks, but the school board will, if the decision of the Tangipahoa Parish School Board is to pursue additional funds via a sales tax proposition, they will define that position in a cooperative endeavor agreement that would be presented to your board for consideration and approval. So they'll make it very clear what their intentions are for your board to act and consider at a future board meeting. So again, what you have is what the board did back in 2011, and the Tangipahoa Parish School Board put a 1 cent sales tax on the ballot, or at least requested the Education Facility District to place it on the ballot with very little restricted uses of the funds, and you can see that in here. They're on page 2. They defined what in the cooperative endeavor agreement, the tax to be a 1% 2% sales and use tax of the district to be submitted for approval of the voters of the district at an election to be held, and at this time it was April 30th, 2011. That tax did not pass, so there was no other requirements of the board at that particular time. So just really wanted to kind of give you the lay of the land of how the relationship with this education facility board will work with the Tangipahoa Parish School Board. And if you have any questions, I can entertain those now.
So have any members that have questions about the role? I mean, this is really a question about just the overall role of this board. And again, this prior cooperative endeavor agreement is just offered by way of example, correct?
Correct.
What, Ms. Jenkins, I don't know, is anybody signaling to you on Zoom that they have anything that they wanted to ask?
Ms. Damiano, Mr. Miller, do y'all have any questions?
No,
Sorry,
just,
Jenkins. Ms. Jenkins,
Yes, ma'am.
I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing.
Okay, I'll try to talk more in the mic. Is that clear?
I'm sorry, I have my computer volume up as high as it will go. I'm just having a little bit of trouble hearing.
Okay.
it's like, being far away from the mic, it kind of picks up room noise, and also it is a little distorted for us.
Okay, I will try to speak into the mic and slower.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Any other questions from any board members on this item? Okay. We'll move on then to the next item, which is to review a possible timeline for the 2021 elections. And Mr. Schnattelbach, are you handling that as well?
Yes. Unfortunately, Mr. Miller and Ms. Damiano, y'all don't have copies of the handouts. I'll forward them to you tomorrow morning via email, so you'll get a copy of them. One of the items in the handouts is a timeline of the tax election requirements. In Louisiana, in order for a government entity to place a tax proposition on the ballot, there are hurdles to go through, requirements to make. One of them is notifying the public that we intend to discuss a tax proposition, and that's going to be the item that's next on the agenda. But if you're looking at the screen, we're following the April 24th timeline. Cindy, did I give you this copy? Okay, I apologize. In the handouts, there's a copy that is targeted for the Education Facility Improvement District, and it couples the schedule you're looking at on the screen is the timeline for the school board. So keep in mind, the Education Facility Improvement District has its own requirements, which are very similar and kind of incorporate with this school board's timeline. But you can see the very first item up there is notification and notify the federal court that we are considering putting a tax proposition on the April 24th tax election. We've made that notification. Ms. Bass made that to our court and notified them. The next item you'll see is that the school board announces and notifies its intent to call the election. That was done on Tuesday, December 1st. Since we're an independent board, the next item, and you don't see it on the screen up there, but is the Education Facility Improvement District holds its first board meeting, and at that meeting will make the announcement that at its next meeting, there may be a possibility to talk about the placement of a tax proposition. And we'll talk about that at the next agenda item. But just going down the timeline, what the school board will do at its, what we've published will be in the paper tomorrow, February 8th, will be a published notification that the Tangipahoa Parish School Board has an intent that at its January 5th meeting may talk about a tax proposition. What our board will do, the Education Facility Improvement Board, is that we will put, if we approve the next item on the agenda, we will put that notification that at the next Education Facility Improvement District board meeting, we could possibly talk about the placement of a sales tax on a tax proposition in April. Well, on January 5th, I'll take that a step back. On our agenda, So once our board, the Education Facility Improvement District Board, votes that it will talk about a tax proposition at a future election, we will publish that notice in the Daily Star on Thursday of this week, which will be December 10th. And we'll make the requirement to give the notification 20 days before the agenda item is up for discussion. So at the January 5th meeting, the school board will make a determination. At that particular meeting, they will decide whether they want to pursue a property tax millage. If the board decides to go with a property tax millage and not a sales tax millage, then there would be no additional items for the Education Facility Improvement District to pursue. Okay, but if the board decides they would prefer a sales tax on the April ballot, then the school board will approve a cooperative endeavor agreement to be presented to the Education Facility Improvement District for consideration. Hopefully in that cooperative endeavor agreement, the school board will define in detail what type of sales tax they would prefer or would like the education facility to consider placing on the ballot. It could be a full penny, it could be a half a penny, it could be a quarter penny. It could be restricted to only use in a certain manner, or it could be unrestricted. But whatever the board decides, it will be defined in that cooperative endeavor agreement. And then what we need to do, one of the things we need to do tonight is decide when this board will meet again. It has to meet before the application to be filed with the State Bond Commission, which is January 13th. So one of the things we'll decide tonight is, do we have a Education Facility District Board meeting number 2 somewhere between January 6th and January 8th. So that'll be another thing to decide. Now, if we have that second board meeting and the board approves the cooperative endeavor agreement and approves the placement of a tax proposition on the April 24th ballot with or without restrictions or whatever the board requests, then we'll file the application with the State Bond Commission. We will do the 4 required public notices in the Daily Star, and then we'll do the other requirements to move forward with getting the item placed on the agenda. So it's a pretty complicated little timeline, but I think I've tried to outline it to see the steps that we have to do, and it gets critical in the fact of notifying the public that we're going to do, and then taking the action all before the deadlines.
Go ahead.
So let's say.
Put your mic on so that they can.
Yeah.
That way Ms. Damiano and them can hear you, hopefully.
So let's say on January the 5th, when the school board meets and they decide to go with the property tax, then there's no need for a meeting in between the 6th, January 6th and the 8th.
That's absolutely correct.
Okay. But we want to decide now just in case.
Correct, because we would have to, like any other meeting, we'd have to give the notice of the intent to meet in the future. So we'd like to set the meeting tonight, have it set in case the board decides to pursue a sales tax as an option.
The issue, Mr. Ferreira, is that if the decision is made to pursue a sales tax or any tax, the notifications have to go out and be published that you're even going to consider that within a certain timeline. So by publishing the notification that we might have this meeting to consider this issue, it just keeps that possibility open to us up until that date.
If you notice on the timeline, I have notes on the bottom. Note number 1 reads, published notice of school board's intent to levy a tax no more than 60 days and no less than 20 days before such public hearing. That's the requirement that we're trying to meet for both the school board and the Education Facility Improvement District.
Okay. Any other questions about the timeline that's been presented? Okay.
Ms. Damiano, Mr. Miller, any questions?
No.
I don't have any, but I think someone said, regardless, we need to set our next meeting. So if the school board chooses the sales tax, we're ready to go. Is that what I understood everybody to say?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct, which is actually the next agenda item. Oh. Okay. Yep, so our next agenda item is to pick that date in January that we will be reconvening. The options outlined on the agenda are January 6th, 7th, or 8th, which is a Wednesday, a Thursday, or a Friday. that first week in January. Do any board members have a restrictive, any dates that they can't meet of those, Mr. Cooper?
I wouldn't be able to meet on the 7th because that is the first Thursday of the month and I have a city council meeting then.
All right, so the 7th is out, so that leaves us the 6th or the 8th. Any other dates that are not available?
Ms.
Okay.
Damiano, Mr. Miller?
That date's fine.
Okay, so then I will accept a motion from somebody that we reconvene on either the 6th or the 8th.
I move that we set the next meeting for January 6th.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Verbois for January the 6th to reconvene.
A second.
The second, I'll take it from Mr. Cooper. Second is made by Mr. Cooper. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any objection to the motion? Do I have an objection from either Ms. Damiano or Mr. Miller?
Ms. Damiano, Mr. Miller, is January 6th okay?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, it'll work.
All right. That'll be at 5 o'clock?
5 o'clock?
Okay.
Fine.
All right, without objection, then the motion is agreed to. Our next meeting will be on January the 6th at 5 o'clock of 2021. The final item on the agenda is actually simply to announce, which I'll take care of. We are officially announcing to the public that at its January 6th, 2021 meeting, the Educational Facilities Improvement District of Tangipahoa Parish plans to discuss the possibility of placing a sales tax proposition on the April 24th, 2021 election ballot. Mr. Schnottelbach, do we need to direct the administration to publish any notices, or do we need to take any official action on that?
That would be beneficial to direct us to publish the notice.
So I will accept a motion at this time directing the school system administration to publish the legally required notices of that announcement.
I make a motion.
Motion is made by Mr. Cooper,
A second.
seconded by Mr. Verbois. Any discussion on the motion? Is there any public input on the motion? There hasn't been any public input, hopefully, because I didn't ask for it earlier. Is there any objection to the motion? Without objection, then the motion is agreed to. Is there anything else to come before the committee or the board? Okay, there being no other business to come before the board, this meeting is adjourned.